on just to monitor baby better, and then you're wanting to wait for mom to be here for the last hour. Yeah. So what's keeping us from here right now? You're wanting to wait for mom to be here for the last hour. Yeah. Oh, they're just strap her in and check it and take her for a walk.
Most people are shocked that a surrogate doesn't get paid. They're just blown away that someone would do this.
Yeah, why would someone do that? and
especially if it's not like a direct relative, it's just a stranger helping another stranger out, and it's not just like monetary helping or volunteering your time. You're volunteering
your whole life,
time, your body, your
health.
So we're here now because I developed preeclampsia about a week ago, and that means that it's not safe for me to carry the baby anymore. So, and it's May. We're supposed to have a like June, July baby, not a May baby. And I've never been induced, and our plan was a home birth, and this is a hospital birth, and it's just all going off plan. I have a headache from the preeclampsia, and my feet are pretty swollen from it, but hopefully everything goes well. I'm really nervous. I first thought about becoming a surrogate when I was 12, and it became more of a serious thought when I was 20 and working towards my family. I went on my third date with my soon-to-be husband, and we talked about it then. We talked about that I wanted to be a surrogate, what being a surrogate was, and that he wanted us to have our babies first, which was really weird because it was a third date. And then it became really serious after I had my second daughter when I was 26. I signed up to be a surrogate when she was 6 weeks old.
We wanted a second child, but unfortunately about 2 months after we started trying, I was in a car accident, so that kind of put a damper on things for quite a while.
The first thing I did was I Googled surrogacy, and then a bunch of agencies came up, and I read their profile, and I found one that I liked what she said, and I liked her personality, and so I sent in their application form, and then they call you back to give you a pre-screening, which is just a conversation. Like, why do you want to be a surrogate? What do you know about surrogacy? How long have you thought about doing this? And all that fun stuff.
Well, once we made the decision to go the surrogacy route, essentially it was just online researching.
It's a little bit like online dating, really. It's
like Tinder, like,
yeah. So you try and read someone's profile and decide if they're normal enough that you could stand to be around them for a couple of years. You know that you're going to be fairly close with them for a long time, so you don't want too much crazy in there. And then the fact that Heather was in Edmonton was a major bonus. But just reading through her profile, she she had a family. She had values that were similar to ours, and it was a fairly easy decision from there.
You want to touch her? She's not doing anything.
The eggs were harvested from Sarah, and the sperm was harvested from me, and so everything is 100% our genetics, and it's just a different oven.
Yeah, and that's kind of how we explained it to our daughter too. It's a little bit of mommy and a little bit of daddy, and Heather's cooking the baby for us.
Why do I like being pregnant? Because my self-esteem goes up when I'm pregnant. I'm chubby normally, and when I'm pregnant, it feels like I'm not chubby, I'm pregnant. I also like feeling like I'm accomplishing something. I'm helping somebody in a way that they can't help themselves. And it just feels like I'm doing something that matters. A lot of people like to say, well, I could never do it, but it's amazing what you're doing.
You see your friends having babies and babies and babies, and it's like a parade, never ending. Everyone's got more babies coming, and you're just kind of sitting there going, well, what the heck do we do?
Nobody that walks through these doors is getting what they want, right? What they wanted was to have great sex, or as some of my clients will say, I'd be satisfied with mediocre sex, and wind up pregnant, you know? But instead, they walk through doors and start going through hoops, and one hoop after another, that puts them in places that they never dreamed they would be, that puts them in legal areas and medical areas and psychological areas when all they wanted was what everybody else wants and seemingly gets, which is to have a healthy, normal pregnancy and baby.
Louise Brown was the first test tube baby, and she was born in 1978. And the pioneers of IVF were Robert Edwards and Patrick Steptoe. And they took an incredible amount of flack, as did Louise Brown's parents. But any pioneer does seem to have an awful lot of media attention and frenzy that is attached to being the first of anything.
It was the homecoming of Louise Brown, the test tube baby. Her mother dashing into the house with a coat over her head and the baby quickly following. Surely no baby in the world can ever have had a homecoming quite like this one. Ken Rees, ITN in Bristol.
But when I first did surrogacy in 1985, I was the first commercial surrogate in the UK, as far as I know. That was traditional surrogacy. So I was the baby's mum, and the father, intending father, was the parent.
Our duty is absolutely clear. We have the well-being and safety and the future of the child to consider.
Surely the parents who want it, its intended parents, are bound to give it a very, very good home.
I think what you say may well be true. As I see it, as a test case, surely we don't want to encourage people producing children for money.
I had no idea of the furor that it would cause, and you couldn't fight it, you were just in it. So it was a shocking time, and the headlines were pretty horrendous. Born to be sold, sold for carpets and curtains, shocking headlines. You know, what sort of woman can do this? No better than prostitution, all of this really. But in my heart of hearts, I always felt I'd done a good thing.
Test tube babies, surrogate mothers, frozen embryos, they're the medical miracles that have allowed many infertile couples to have children. They also raise explosive ethical questions, questions most Canadians have never even debated.
There's a lot of stigma attached with surrogacy. I always say people are very misinformed. A lot of people do not understand what's involved, that it's the gametes of the intended parent. She's not getting pregnant with the intended father's sperm. It's not her own genetic child. There's this belief that they are paid fees. There's not a lot of support towards being a surrogate in Canada. It's much better than it was 15 years ago.
So when we're talking about surrogacy, we're talking, using that as a catch-all phrase, but really there's two different kinds of surrogacy. There's gestational surrogacy, where the person who's carrying a baby on behalf of someone else has no genetic connection to the child. And then there's traditional surrogacy, where the woman who's carrying the baby on behalf of someone else does have a genetic connection to that child. Most of the time when we're talking about surrogacy or reading about, the celebrities involved in surrogacy, we're really talking about gestational surrogacy, and that's most of what takes place in the clinics.
We estimate that approximately 15% of the population has some issue around infertility.
I think that when you begin to consider surrogacy, it's not the beginning of a journey, it is the end, or the end point that leads to the beginning of life with children.
I think it's going to be beyond overwhelming to have this little package just kind of dropped on you all of a sudden when, when it's you carrying a baby, you're already used to it being with you day and night, but then all of a sudden to just essentially have somebody give you your baby out of the blue, I can't even imagine what my emotions will do at that point. What are your thoughts?
I know we're going to have a kid and everything's going to be fine, but it's more of the loss for Heather that I'm thinking about as well, because there's definitely hormonal attachments, physical attachments that are happening there that you can't replace.
No, I don't think I'll be attached to the baby when she's born because we have a different connection. I'm not planning to have, like, I'm not planning my nursery. I'm not planning what my life is going to be like with a newborn. I'm planning on having a baby and sleeping for a very long time and giving this baby to Sarah and Jason and coming to visit and cuddle and be the, like, kind of like an aunt relationship, which is better than a mom relationship because I got that with 2 kids.
I think for any intended mother, there's a grief that accompanies the reason why she could not easily become pregnant and carry the pregnancy herself. Most women, I believe, really have a lot of fantasies starting. I mean, we're not playing with those little baby dolls when we're 7 for nothing. You know, there's this desire that we're going to be mommies and we're going to give birth. And you know, what the experience of infertility does is it alters all of that. The grief isn't about not having the birth experience. The grief is the accumulation of knowing you're not going to get it, managing it, integrating that loss, and welcoming the child irrespective of the way it comes into the world.
That's it. Good job. No noise. Right in your mouth. All that pressure. All that pressure. Good job. Good job. Good job. Good job. Good job. Pull on your knees. Pull on your knees. Make lots of room. That's it. Good job. Beautiful. And big push again. Go. Holy Jesus. Oh. Never 1 second. You can grab that scissors. Oh. Congratulations.
Really, that's it?
Over here. No more donations. We'll just, yeah. Do you want to go grab it for a sec? Get that off. We're going to wait for that. We're going to take this clamp off. We're going to get it tied so I'm here so we can fit this on there. Which looks great. Oh, I see on the top. We're just getting some glasses. It's all about it. Yeah.
I'm probably going to be a surrogate 3-4 times, depending how my body does. As long as it reacts well, why not keep doing it? And he's worried about me being sad after the baby, but he loves Sarah and Jason. He's excited we're doing it for them. He's excited that he gets to tell people I'm having a baby and it's not his. And he's put a cap on how many times I can be a surrogate, because 8 is enough, apparently.
8.
Yeah, he said I could have 8 surrogate babies and that's it. Because then it's 10 pregnancies altogether, and that is enough. I don't think I'll do it that many times, so.
So the laws in Canada are effectively that you cannot pay a surrogate an income. So you cannot hire a commercial surrogate. You can compensate what we call an altruistic surrogate for her various expenses, but you can't pay a wage to a surrogate.
Canadian taxpayers have paid over $40 million for this legislation, and it's a joke. It's a joke. It is a joke. To create the Assisted Human Reproduction Act, so it's there. They were supposed to create an agency that was going to regulate it, and they all quit their jobs. They're not there. No one's giving us direction. They were supposed to give us a list of what's considered reimbursable, what's not. They never did.
I call them, I pester them, and I tell them, do your job. Do your job. I actually think that what they're doing is morally wrong. And the reason I say that is that I think Canadians who want to be law-abiding Canadians should have a chance to do that. And the only way they can do that is to actually know what the law says. And Health Canada won't, in fact, write the regulations.
It is ironic that our law permits agencies to charge money. It permits attorneys to charge money to try to interpret what the Assisted Human Reproduction Act actually says. It permits labs to charge money. It permits everybody to charge money other than the actual surrogate or egg donor or sperm donor, who are the people the most involved in the process. It's kind of odd.
And our current law says that commercial surrogacy would be both commodifying and exploitative. And I actually think that commercial surrogacy would be less exploitative than currently expecting women to do this you know, purely on an altruistic basis. It's work, right? Being pregnant, they call it labor for a reason. It's work.
This is our annual surrogate mother retreat that we host every year, where surrogate mothers can meet other surrogates and have great company and great food, and also meet with industry professionals, lawyers, fertility clinic, nurse, and also the social worker.
I came to SCO in the beginning of this year. I matched with a wonderful couple. We did transfer. I ended up miscarrying for them at 6 weeks, so we took some time off, and we're actually transferring again in 3 weeks. So I'm just at the beginning stages of transferring again.
I gave birth to my surrogate baby in July. I had a little boy, and now we are in the process of planning a sibling journey for probably early spring next year, so that he can have another brother or sister.
I had my surrogate baby in February. It was a little girl. I am currently 10 weeks pregnant with another couple's baby.
When you tell people that you're going to be a surrogate, it's more of a question and answer period than it is, oh, that's wonderful. How are you feeling? It's more like, well, I have 20 questions. Like, I don't understand. And I think the perception is so off, and there's not enough information, and there's a huge stigma. I think there's so much negativity surrounded around the concept of surrogacy that there's not enough positivity. I think if I tell you I'm going to do this, you know, I don't want your 20 questions.
If you're sick and have morning sickness, no one has sympathy for you because they say you did it to yourself.
Yeah.
Like, you knew what you were doing and you did it to yourself. But if I was pregnant with my own child, everybody would be there to help me. So what's the difference? None of us should ever, ever, ever financially be out to have a baby for somebody else, and that's the thing.
Oh,
None of
no,
us,
I'm
not
not.
1 cent.
No, I'm not arguing that, and that even goes to the point we're saying that having to submit receipts is honestly, and even if you are in love with your IPs, it is the most degrading thing in the world. Saying, "I bought some groceries, here you go," or "I had to buy some pads,
I had a
here
craving
you
for some
go.
blueberries. Here's
I needed
my
a new
receipt."
bra because my boobs are too big. You shouldn't have to do that. It's what you said. If you're trusting us to grow your child inside of our body, you can trust us to realize that we're not in it to keep your money.
Surrogate mothers should be paid. They should be allowed to be paid. Surrogate mothers are not going to ask for payment. They will not ask for payment. They don't. It's a very uncomfortable topic because they want to carry a baby for someone, but they want to protect themselves and their family at the same time. It's extremely awkward to say, I want to help you have a baby, but I want to be paid too. The two don't go hand in hand.
One of the things that doesn't make sense to me is where you have a law that's not being enforced because there's an overwhelming disconnect between the law and the society that it's supposed to be governing. If a society believes that a law is outdated and archaic and is not enforcing the law, well, that law shouldn't be on the books. And one of the things that is ironic in this is that people in Canada can feel free to go outside of Canada and do exactly what they're precluded from doing in Canada, and they come back with a baby and they're celebrated. Yet they would be a criminal if they did exactly the same thing in Canada if we ever enforced this law.
There has been one prosecution around surrogacy of an agent of a person who arranged surrogacies, and that actually was initiated by the RCMP based on the tip they got from the FBI. So Health Canada, the federal government, was not even involved in that.
There was a lawyer that I was referring to in the United States who was actually part of a baby selling ring out of the Ukraine. I had no idea. I thought that there were failed surrogacies, so surrogacies in which the parents had walked away, and there were these vulnerable women who were pregnant and these babies with nowhere to go. And so I referred clients to this lawyer, and it was customary that these lawyers that I worked with in the US would pay a referral fee for business. I accepted those referral fees in good faith, A, that was something I was able to do, and B, that these were in fact failed surrogacies. I knew that my connection with her was problematic. However, I had no idea that the RCMP were going to knock on the door, you know, pull guns on us, and essentially shut down my business. I wasn't able to communicate with my clients. I wasn't able to communicate with the reporters knocking on my door. I wasn't able to say anything. And it killed me because I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to talk to the police. I wanted to tell them, like, this is a mistake. This is not me. When they served the warrant, it talked about baby selling. It talked about paying surrogates, paying egg donors, fraud. You know, they decided investigate me on 27 criminal charges. And 26 of them I didn't care about, but when they said fraud, like, all I have is my name, that was it. That, to me, is all I've ever had is my name, and it was devastating. I sat in the office and thought, my phone is never gonna ring again. Who is going to call, and who is going to even want to work with me after the National Post articles and everything else? And the phone rang, and the phone rang, and the phone rang. And, you know, in the news, it said a lot of hurtful things, but it also said I had a surrogacy business, and people hadn't known that that was an option in Canada.
I always wanted children, but I never had my soulmate. And I was virtually married to my career as a criminal lawyer. And I have no regrets. So when it was finally time to make that family with Chris, finding out that I would not be the biological mother was extremely difficult to accept. But it was difficult in my heart. It was easy in my head. Our lawyer had actually recommended that we place an ad on Craigslist for surrogate, and somebody responded to that. So we thought we found our surrogate. And she passed all the medical screening, the psychological screening. We met with her. She seemed wonderful. And we set up the transfer, the in vitro. And she got pregnant right away. We were beyond excited. We got the call from the clinic that the first blood test was very good, and they would do a second blood test the next day. And they couldn't get a hold of the surrogate. She disappeared. And they finally got hold of her. She did the next blood test. She didn't call me. She stopped corresponding with me, and everything changed as soon as she got pregnant. And to this day, I don't know the reason why. She lied about many, many things. The journey was simply a nightmare after that. It got to the point where around the 18th week, things were so bad with her that we had to hire a private investigator to trail her and her husband to know where they were living. She had lied about where they were living. She wasn't paying her rent. We found out she was being evicted. She certainly didn't demand money. When she went AWOL on us, it wasn't about money. She never asked for it. And in the last week, when the baby wasn't growing and the doctor asked her to stay in bed, I did grocery shopping for her. And when I delivered the groceries in her home, I opened the cupboards to put them away, and there was no food. There was a peanut butter jar in the fridge and Nutri-Bars in the cupboard. That was it. So I had to buy groceries for them. We were going through this terrible time with this woman carrying our baby who didn't seem to care at all about how we felt, and I was worried sick about the health of our child. It was stressful to our marriage, it was stressful to our lives, and we were just worried sick all the time. And then finally it was time, and the doctor decided that she would like to schedule an induction because the baby was due just before Christmas, and our surrogate had 4 children, and Christmas was going to be difficult enough. But the number one reason was that she was worried that if she wasn't on call, that she wouldn't be there for the delivery, that the surrogate would not tell us when she'd gone into labor. So we chose her last day on call that was the most feasible for the baby to come. And that was December 7th, 2008. This always happens. And we held her in our arms within seconds of her birth. And you forget all the pain I mean, I'm still emotional, but the pain is gone. The anger was gone. All of it just washed away with the birth fluid. It was very emotional. So all in all, when Etta came, with the inseminations and the in vitro, she cost close to $100,000 without my lost income.
One reason why the cross-border surrogacy market began to develop was that surrogacy in the US, for example, was becoming quite expensive. So couples were looking for a cheaper alternative. And some went to Mexico, some went to India. Those were major destinations. Other countries like Thailand also became destinations. And at that point, we have a sort of, globalization of capital, or whatever you want to call it, and market regimes in lots of different countries. And those countries, particularly India, were quite keen to see surrogacy develop.
Surrogacy in India begins with a famous case of a mother having children for her son or daughter. That the idea that a mother could carry the children of her children is so ethically and imaginatively interesting that started this cascade of possibilities. Technologically, it's a relatively simple thing to do, but as a result, other kinds of services were born from that. And I think the Indian surrogacy market has been around for about 10 years, maybe a bit longer than that. It's entered the public consciousness only in the last couple of years, really. And it's increasing in its media friendliness, and as a result, government has taken notice, and now India is poised to finally put together a comprehensive sort of bill to control the industry somewhat.
The surrogacy industry in India is valued at $400 million a year. So this is a very major business. And it is therefore kind of surprising that India is regulating. But I think partly because there had been a number of abuses, and partly also because there is a sort of anti-colonial sense that they were being used by, the West as the womb of the world.
One of my criticisms of the classical surrogacy model, in India in particular, is that the obligation to care for these women ends at the point of delivery. So once they've given birth, all that great nutritional support, all the great social support, all that stuff ends. We don't know what happens afterwards. Is there postpartum depression? Is there postpartum hemorrhaging? All these issues may come up. And if indeed this high-quality Western medical care ends at that point, we have actually made these women's lives, at least in the short term, worse.
So I would say that for critics to sit here and to criticize any procedure is very easy. But I would say them that they are the real critics if they can go and live the life of that infertile couple and surrogate. And if they can go and help that infertile couple with a baby, or help that surrogate fulfill her dream by giving her that kind of money. If they can do that, they have a right to criticize, and I can listen to them. If not, I just ignore them. They have no right to criticize this procedure.
I think, people that are going to third world countries, that is exploitation. I mean, in India, all those surrogates are kept in a sort of like a dormitory thing in a house. It's like house arrest while they brood these babies. It seems quite horrible. But, for them, of course, the monies paid are life-changing. That's not right. And I think most countries now are closing those borders so that it now can't take place.
But the big abuse, of course, was the babygamy case in Thailand. And that was the case in which a young woman, who again was from a lower socioeconomic background, had 2 children of her own, was commissioned by an Australian couple and had 2 children, one of whom had Down syndrome. And the commissioning couple refused to take that twin, but accepted the twin who didn't have Down syndrome.
that this issue of children being stateless and not having the right recognition of legal parenthood is a global problem. And we dealt with the very first international surrogacy case involving a UK couple who went to the Ukraine for surrogacy. And in that case, the Ukraine law treated our clients, the British parents, as the legal parents, but British law recognised the Ukrainian surrogate and her husband as the parents. So as a result, nobody was a parent under their own system of law, and the children were legally stateless and parentless.
I also have worries about what criminalizations in places like Canada, the effects that our criminalizations have on the industry globally. And we basically are outsourcing this work. And it is falling on the backs of women who are, I do think, exploited because of how vulnerable they are, because of how limited their education is, their other options. And I actually think that if we would, pay Canadian women to do the work, who are women who are educated, who have other options, who are not the most vulnerable members of our societies, we would, in effect, stop outsourcing labor to a very vulnerable population.
When we think about reproductive tourism, it works both ways. We can think of our Canadians going out, but we also have had a huge influx of people from other countries coming to Canada because they have found that the environment is a good environment for them, and it's not costing them as much as it is in other places.
Right now, there's a lot of international intended parents coming to Canada. So they see Canadian women as free. I don't like this because their other option was the United States, and these women are receiving $36,000 is the average amount that they're receiving to be a surrogate, but Canadian women are free. And we have a free healthcare system. Wow, even better. The hospitals aren't getting paid to do that. Not by the intended parents. They have to take it from the taxpayers. And in turn, Canadian couples are struggling because now they're not finding surrogates. The international couples are matching with these surrogates. The international couples are very wealthy, so they will pay more to these surrogate mothers in Canada. They may give them money or more gifts or more incentives than a Canadian couple may because they feel very stymied by the law.
My name is Philip. He is Philip as well. Our surrogate is named Elise. And we are excited she is part of our journey.
So when I was on Facebook one day, I seen a surrogacy post, and I figured, why not? And I gave Anja a message, and it just kind of spiraled from there. It's a scary decision, right? It seems like a good idea at the beginning, and then you think about the fact you're giving up your life, your body, your children, and your spouse are involved, and I mean, you're gonna do a lot for this baby, and then you don't get to bring this baby home at the end of the day. So it's a big commitment, and I kind of had to think it over.
Yeah, I think Elise might feel a little more detached because since it's not her eggs, it was my dream as well, getting older. I mean, not that you give up, but because of we're gays, it's not meant to be. But when he came up with the solution of having a surrogate and everything, for me it became just, oh wow, so it's possible. And I would have never done that alone, so it was just a dream coming true.
So when the Phils and I first talked, yes, it was over FaceTime, and we just really connected. It's funny because Phil Malo doesn't have the best English, so when he speaks, it kind of makes you giggle every now and then, the things he says. And he's great. He'll laugh with you. He doesn't get embarrassed or shy. Like, he'll just giggle with you. Phil Robert is more conservative, I guess, maybe. He's the older one in the relationship. More mature one, I guess. I don't know. He's got his own personality.
So we call the agency, we take more information, and the agency present to us Elise, our surrogate. We met her by Skype. It was we have to meet a lot of surrogate by Skype, and we chose Elise.
Yeah, more than a good fit when you see someone for the first time and you just, wow. It was like almost a revelation because there was a connection right there.
Our first transfer didn't take, The eggs were not very strong. We only ended up with 1. This time we had 5, and they transferred 2. Dr. Liebrecht was very excited. He said that they are really healthy, they're hatching, they're ready to go. They're waiting for a uterus, he worded it. They put them in, which is a very interesting process. And then both of them ended up taking. But then 6 weeks later, I unfortunately lost one. But the one's still healthy and going 5 months later.
So it was really stressful. It was a little hard for us. And on top of that, the money issues, because you don't want to think about money when to talk about having a baby and everything, but in our case, it's something that you just cannot think about because it's a lot of money, and because we lost the first embryo, then we had to start all over again. If you lose the baby, if it doesn't work, your dream doesn't come true, and you're $80,000, $100,000 poor, you know. So it's a lot of stress. A friend of ours said, yeah, but it's just the way it is. Pregnancy is like this. And we're like, oh, yes, but IVF are a little different because you have many appointments before you get embryos and then transfer. And then a couple of days after, you have another blood test to see how your hormones level are, and then another, and ultrasound. We, like, after 18 weeks, we've done 6 ultrasounds so far. And then comes the, like you said, the bleeding. So stressful because we cannot help. We're like 7-8 hours away from Elise. Otherwise, we would be there at the hospital holding her hands. No, we're just waiting, like looking at the phone and waiting for good news. You know?
She called us and she was panicking. She was at the urgency and she said, oh, I'm bleeding.
And she was alone.
Yeah, she was alone. And I was in Montreal and I was trying to help her, but it was impossible.
We went into the room and I took out my selfie stick and I FaceTimed the Phils. And Dr. Liebrecht was absolutely amazing. He loves, being there to direct the whole ultrasound and let everybody know what's going on. And the Phils were on the screen, and we went over what was happening with the ultrasound.
Hi, nice to see you guys. It's a very exciting day today. We're going to be having a look to see what's happening. As you know, we put in 2 beautiful embryos, so we hope either 1 or 2 of those took, and we're going to be able to tell right now what's happening and whether there's a heartbeat and all that sort of thing, okay? We want this baby to be smarter than the parents, right, guys? Just a second, we're just getting it ready. Okay, and we're going to do a Doppler just to hear the heartbeat. So we're going to do that right now, so you'll be able to actually hear it all the way from Montreal. And if you look really closely, there's a heart beating there.
Okay, leave it there.
Yeah, do you see it? See it beating there? Wow.
There you go.
That's amazing. So we can actually hear the heart beating here. And you see the little circle there? That's called the yolk sac. That creates the blood cells for the baby to before it becomes bone marrow. The embryo looks really great so far. Now she's measuring it. And it's exactly where it should be. It's really great size. Yeah, size is perfect of this one. So it's very, very exciting. Yeah.
We got really, really excited. That was the first time that it was like real. Like we realized at that very moment that we had our baby on its way, and it was something else. We were so happy to see the little thing moving, and it's just hard to explain.
The Phils were very ecstatic and happy, but we're sad at the same time that they couldn't make it. So the Phils and I were gonna get together. I think that was the second time meeting. They rented out a room They asked me what kind of food I like. I like red meat. It's kind of my favorite thing. So they showed me actually a really interesting way to make steak and asparagus. Went out, got food, cooked for like over an hour. They even made homemade dessert. They're awesome.
So we had like a special time to speak with them and share like who they are and who we are. So it was really nice. It's really nice to see the belly when she sends a picture, and we get really excited for the night. But the next day, it's just you go back to your normal life, and there is no belly, there's nothing, you know. It's not the same thing than just living the pregnancy like the old 9 months.
Yes, we had a great night, and it was a good bonding experience. And it makes it a little more real, the fact that I am carrying their child.
I try not to have expectations too far. Like, right now, we're about 18 weeks. Like, we start to visualize and see it's true and it's coming, and, you know, but the last 17 weeks were like roller coaster, and so we learned how to live day by day with that and having the less expectations possible.
Certainly feminists and ethicists talk a lot about the relationship between surrogacy and prostitution. And you have the same kind of debate where on the one hand you have women who do the work, many of them saying, we choose this, we like this, we're choosing this authentically, we have other options. And on the other hand, you have people, and I imagine other ethicists you might talk to, saying it's degrading, it's belittling, it offends against human dignity, or it offends against social values.
It's not the only one, but I think that paid surrogacy, making this into a commercial transaction, doing what we call reifying, making the baby into a thing, objectifying, you know, I want a Chanel handbag and I want a baby, and, you know, I'm prepared to pay for both. And I think that's wrong. But I also think it's wrong when we get to the level of our important societal values on which we found our Canadian society.
When we talk about social values, I mean, I get a little nervous just because I think there's a general sense out there that the selling of sex ruins what intimacy means for other people. And the selling of gestation ruins what motherhood means for other people. That somehow if these goods are ascribed a price value, they lose their moral value.
Infertility itself is awful, and it's actually, I consider it to be almost a hidden disability. And when I say that, people who don't have problems with fertility look at me like I'm some kind of flag-waving, spoiled brat person who doesn't understand what a problem really is. Well, let me tell you, I know that when 1 in 6 couples experiences infertility in this country, it is a significant problem.
There are a lot of things in the world that people want that they can't have. And that might, for some couples, turn out to be the thing that they want and can't have. You don't have a right to have a child. Nobody has a right to have a child. And I worry about the language and the rhetoric in reproduction where we constantly hear people talking about their rights. I have this right. And you don't have a right. You're just asserting it. Who gave you that right? Where do you think it comes from? You don't have a right.
I've met, over the years, hundreds of opponents, you know, life organisations that you're fiddling around and playing around with life, and that if it's your lot not to have a child, then accept it. But with today's technology, why should we? Why should we? And then I would turn around and say, how many children do you have?
It started with a text message from Leslie saying Elise broke her water.
So first thing in the morning, I get up and a little gush happens. So I look at my spouse and I'm like, my water broke. She jumps up in excitement and she goes, no, it didn't. And all of a sudden, there was a lot of water.
So I'm like, Phil, wake up, we need to go. So he woke up, and like within, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes, we were on the road coming down to Woodstock.
And then we came to the hospital, and it was kind of a slow start. I had 6 hours to hopefully get some contractions, which did not happen. I was induced, so my natural delivery kind of went down the toilet.
The old trip on the road, we were pretty sure to be on time because we were still text messaging with Leslie, and she has no contractions yet.
When we arrived at the hospital, I was happy because Ellie was on the bed and she said, no, you're fine, I just have a little contraction. So I said, oh my God, I will be there for the delivery. I was so happy.
And if it doesn't, then I get a C-section.
Me, I was really scary because it was too long, and I said, is it normal? So I didn't know. I was asking a lot of questions to the nurse, and she said, no, all is fine.
Did the cervix feel quite tight?
Yeah, it is. It's tight.
Elise, during the delivery, Elise said to me that I was squeezing more her hands than she was squeezing my hands. So I was I think I was too scary. I was nervous.
The birth was really quick, as the staff said, and it was pretty easy. Very emotional for me and for Phil, I know.
Oh my God! Oh my God! She's here! Oh, she's here!
Oh my God! Everything happened so fast. I feel like it took like 10 minutes.
Okay, so you just move this lady on your chest.
And seeing their faces was absolutely amazing. It made everything worthwhile. Every, scare or pain that you have while you're growing her inside of you, or pukey mornings, it was all worth it at the end of the day, just to see how happy they were and the tears that came from their eyes and stuff. And I was the first one to hold her, so that was a pretty special moment for me.
Good job.
Good job.
Passed her off to Dad. Dad cried, I cried, Leslie cried, other dad cried, we all cried. With this situation, that this child is going to have unconditional love. Because this wasn't a child where, oh, surprise, we're having a baby. They put a lot of time, money, effort, patience, sweat, blood, and tears into having this little girl. This little girl is going to be absolutely everything to them. She already is. Those parents are the happiest two people in the entire world right now.
This was a dream. It came true, and when I first held her in my arms, I was crying. I was very, very, very emotional, and there's no words to describe how I felt.
I love her to bits and pieces, I really do. She's so cute and she's perfect, but no, I am very happy I don't have to bring home a baby. I'm just still trying to wrap my head around the fact that I did this and it's over. I guess that's almost sad too. It's over. So I'm now looking forward to getting pictures and videos and seeing how she grows and what she's gonna look like, and that's exciting. And I hope she wants to meet me. I hope, I'm gonna cry. I hope. So many hormones still, sorry. I hope that she wants to know who I am and how she came in this world, and I would still like to be a part of her life. Obviously, I'm not mom, and I don't want to take that role, but I'd like to see how she grows up and the person she is, and
kind of sucks. This is the only time I'm going to get to hold her. Can I hold her for a couple more minutes? A couple more seconds?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
Sure.
No.
Very good.
Thank you guys so much for picking me. Thank you for letting me be a part of this. And thank you for letting me hold her. Hold her first. I got to be the first person to hold her when she came in this world. That feels amazing. Thank you.
I am so grateful about this whole journey, and I wish to thank Elise so much because she changed our lives. It's amazing. I have no words.
I wouldn't take back anything. I don't regret anything. This is the most amazing thing that I've ever done. And now, not many people can say they've done what I've done. I can say I created a family. I give somebody hope, love, and a family. I guess that's the most important thing. I gave them a family. They have unconditional love.